Welcome to a special edition of The Horror Guys with the Swamp Thing. All about the Swamp Thing.
Everything Swamp Thing.
I'm Kevin.
And I'm Brian.
And we're going to talk about the 1982 movie Swamp Thing, the 1989 Return of Swamp Thing, the older TV series, and the brand new TV series.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize there were two TV series along with the two movies. I think most people know about the movies. The series
Especially
are kind of
the
different.
first movie. I think fewer people know about Return of Swamp Thing. We'll tell you all about it.
There's probably a reason for that.
Well,
Well, I don't know. What year did the original Swamp Thing comic book come out? Like in the 60s, probably? I didn't really research the comics
we
at all,
didn't research that.
He's been around for a long time.
Yeah. I had many Swamp Thing comic books.
Swamp Thing is a DC character, so he's in the same universe as Batman and Superman. Not quite as well known, but he's been around for many decades. And in 1982, he got his first big screen treatment.
Movie.
Directed by Wes Craven, Nightmare on Elm Street guy.
Before Nightmare.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Written by him and Len Wein and Bernie Wrightson, stars Louis Jordan, Adrienne Barbeau, and Ray Wise. Leland Palmer himself.
I thought this was some of Adrienne Barbeau's finest work.
She's probably the best actor in the show, yeah. 1 hour, 31 minutes.
When you say Scream Queen, I think
she's certainly in the top 10.
The archetype of that, yeah.
Did you like it?
Overall, yeah. Yeah, I did.
Would you say it's the best of the bunch?
Of the movies, yes.
Of the two movies, it's the better of the two, yeah.
Yeah, I like it way better than the second movie and way better than the original series.
Okay.
The new series I liked a lot, but we got
let's
gypped.
Save the new series.
We got gypped. So
we did get gypped.
So overall, I think I might call this my favorite.
Okay, because it is a complete story.
Yeah.
Well, the Swamp Thing, and the credits roll right from the beginning. The credits roll over scenes of the swamp. It's a quiet, peaceful place.
Not for long.
Then the helicopter lands. On board is Alice Cable, a reporter who is coming to the swamp to assist Dr. Alec Holland, a scientist who is researching something to do with plants, but it's so secret even the boss doesn't really understand it. He's got a whole research lab where he works with his sister. For a while we thought it was his wife, but no, it's his sister. Yeah,
they kind of play around with that a little bit because Adrienne Barbeau meets the other Dr. Holland, and she's like, oh,
a little jealous.
He's not single. Yeah. I'm like, oh, he is single.
He is,
yes, it's his sister. All right.
Sisters are okay.
Yeah.
The soldiers capture and kill one of Holland's helpers with a poisonous snake. Holland has been recalled to Washington, but he hasn't been told this yet. They want him and the substance back where they can keep their eyes on him.
But there's evil soldiers at work, working again.
There's
part of the security is actually the opposite of security.
Yeah, infiltrators.
Yeah.
Holland wants to take Cable out into the swamp to show her around.
That's Adrienne Barbeau.
Yes.
That's her name, Cable. Yeah.
He loves the swamp, and to him it's a thing of beauty. When they return from checking on a broken sensor, they find that the latest batch of stuff that Linda, Holland's sister, was cooking up is literally explosive.
And a thing about that sensor, too, it was a malfunctioning sensor, so they just went out to fix it. Turns out it was a sabotaged sensor, so somebody's working against them. They know something's up, and Adrienne Barbeau is on high alert. She's a special agent, security agent.
She's supposed to be a reporter, but
No, she was a government agent.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, it's complicated.
Yeah.
Holland explains that he's working on a genetically combining animal and vegetable DNA. They find a huge jump in progress. It's a breakthrough, finally.
Because do we get to the droplets yet, where it grows? Or is that too soon?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. She's dropping the droplets on the... She discovers by accident that it makes little explosions on impact. Well, later, every place where a droplet hit the wood floor that's been there for ages, it sprouts. Yeah.
The dead
wood
floor
grows. So it's a super incredible plant growth rejuvenator. Yeah.
Well, as Cable goes to tell Ritter, she sees on the monitor that the camp is under attack. The base is quickly overrun. Ritter reaches up and pulls off his mask. Underneath, it's Scooby-Doo. No. It's the Hound of the Baskerville. No. It's
Dr. Arcane.
Linda,
Evil.
Yeah, Linda is killed and Holland is knocked down with the substance, which explodes and sets him on fire. because, just getting the stuff thrown in your face isn't enough.
Well, it's flammable and explosive, and he's drenched in it. And
he runs out of the building in flames and falls into the swamp. He's probably dead.
Mm-hmm.
Arcane orders no witnesses. But Cable sneaks out the back and hides in the swamp.
Yep, she gets away.
Later on, she's still captured.
Yeah.
They take her out in the boat and drown her. She's dead. The Swamp Thing rises out of the water and rescues her at the last minute.
Mm-hmm.
The men shoot at him, but they all miss because of plot armor.
Oh, I don't think they all missed. He's just bulletproof.
Okay.
They weren't very good shots.
Actually, I think they all miss in the show.
Mostly do.
I mean, you shoot Swamp Thing, nothing's going to happen. But I think visually, they all miss. Arcane wants to replicate the formula, but he only found 6 of the 7 notebooks.
And Cable has the other one hidden away.
Cable escapes from the men chasing her and runs into Jude, a kid who runs a convenience store. She then calls Ritter, who is really Arcane, and tells him that she has the notebook.
Yeah, she doesn't know this yet.
Ritter is the guy who was outside the mask.
Yeah, she doesn't know that yet.
They chase her some more, but Swamp Thing intervenes, throwing men every which way.
Because he's super strong.
Arcane wants the notebook and the Swamp Thing. He thinks Holland has found the secret to immortality. The next morning, Cable and Jude take out a boat and go to look for Holland/Swamp Thing. Swamp Thing finds his sister's locket, and it looks like he may remember her somewhat. See, before this point, he was kind of a wild monster. Cable then retrieves the notebook from where she had it hidden. The soldiers catch up a Swamp Thing and shoot him a ridiculous amount of times, but the bullets and grenades used have very little effect.
Don't hurt.
Yep. He manages to steal a boat and crash into a second boat, which sinks them both. Arcane then realizes Swamp Thing is intelligent. He's not just a Bigfoot monster. Yeah.
Nope.
Jude, the little boy, is killed, but Swamp Thing then heals him, brings him right back.
Yeah,
and he's bloody. He's definitely dead. Yeah.
Yeah, he takes a chunk of himself and into the wound, and it has healing powers, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
And that was a thing from the comic, I think. They kept that.
Yeah, I haven't read many Swamp Thing comics.
Yeah,
I don't know the comics well.
Yeah.
He gives the final notebook to Swamp Thing. Cable tells Ferret, one of the other men, I don't mind the swamp. It's the slimy things that crawl out from under the rocks that I can't stomach.
Like the soldiers.
Meaning him.
The bad guy soldiers.
Ferret then cuts off Swamp Thing's arm, and Swamp Thing kills Ferret. Swamp Thing talks to Cable, and she realizes it's Alec Holland under there. Oh, he wasn't killed in the explosion.
He wasn't killed, or was he?
Next, we get a completely gratuitous nude scene of Cable taking a swamp bath. Because if you want to get sexy time, you do it in the swamp water. Yeah.
and what kind of movie would it be without seeing Adrienne Barbeau's at least cleavage?
Without seeing Adrienne Barbeau's? Arcane catches them both, and the notebook as well. We switch scenes to Arcane's home, and along with it, a party with another nude scene. He drinks a toast to Bruno.
That's just some party girls.
Yeah.
He's got, gratuitous party girls hanging around.
They have their own Barbeaus.
Yeah.
He drinks a toast to Bruno, who captured the monster and the notebook.
Bruno has asks, a special drink.
Yeah. When will we see the results? No, actually, he's been given the first dose to Bruno already.
Very soon.
Bruno convulses and becomes a mousy little dwarf. He sees that Holland has kept his mind and gained his strength. Why doesn't Bruno have that strength? Holland explains that the serum only amplifies your essence. It makes you more of what you already are.
And he was a wimpy little person inside, and that's what he became.
Yeah, he's a big, strong, muscly guy, but he's got a mousy personality.
He became very mousy. Yeah, which was actually kind of a neat effect, and the makeup was decent on him. It wasn't the same actor.
No,
they switched actors, but the effect of the change and then the little guy's makeup afterwards was really good. Yeah.
Mousy face, too.
Yeah.
Arcane likes the idea of becoming more of what you already are, so he drinks the formula next.
Because he thinks he'll be super duper.
He expects to be a thing of great beauty and intelligence.
Well,
not so much.
Not so much.
Meanwhile, in the dungeon, Swamp Thing finds a single beam of sunlight that lets him grow his arm back. Arcane then turns into a big old monster. Bruno helps him escape the dungeon, but they have to fight Arcane first. Arcane stabs Cable with a sword, and Swamp Thing beats him down with a tree stump. He manages to heal Cable, and then stabs Arcane with his own sword.
Pretty good fight scene.
The end. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I saw this way back in the theater when it came out, and I
Me
liked
too.
it then.
Yeah.
And several times on reruns since, but I didn't remember any nudity, and there were 2 explicit nude scenes in this now. And I wonder if it was cleaned up for the theater, and or if these were added later.
I wonder that too. Yeah. I don't remember full topless nudity in it.
I was underage at that point, and I'm sure I would have remembered it if it was R-rated or anything like that. And it wasn't.
I don't remember that. So I think there's a...
This didn't say
a
director's
naughtier
cut,
version.
but yeah, it may have
I
been.
think they put it back in.
The swamp and the scenery look very real. Wherever they shot this, it was well done. The Swamp Thing suit looks a lot like a wetsuit with some stringy vines and stuff glued on. Not the greatest Swamp Thing.
Better than the old TV series, though. Yeah.
I think it's about the same.
No.
Arcane's monster suit is far worse, like something out of 1960 Star Trek. It's a big rubber mask. Arcane's soldiers and henchmen are all comic book level stupid, and Cable and Swamp Thing always seem to be within scream range. She yells and he hears her every time.
It's very comic booky. They made it very comic booky on purpose.
This was before any of the big comic book. I think this was before Batman. Superman had been around since the 70s. Christopher Reeve's Superman had been there, but other than Christopher Reeve's Superman, I don't think there had been a big superhero movie at all.
This might have been the second
and this is
one.
only marginally superhero to begin with. This is he's kind of a comic book,
kind of an anti-hero sort of. Yeah, but all in all, I like it.
You're a comic book. Yeah, I like it. It's definitely entertaining.
Yeah, thumbs up.
Not scary, not serious, but it's fun. Which takes us to the second movie. They took 7 years to think this one over, and then we have The Return of Swamp Thing. 1989, directed by Jim Wynorski, written by Len Wein and Bernie Wrightson, and stars Louis Jordan again, Heather Locklear, and Sarah Douglas. Did you like it?
Yeah. Not nearly as well as the first one.
That's a good answer. Meh.
Yeah.
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 It's not terrible. It's an entertaining couple hours, but it's
Porridge.
not good.
It was like eating porridge. Filling, but, not that tasty.
If you watch the first one and liked it, you ought to watch the second one, but
to collect the set.
Don't expect the second one to be better.
Yeah, I didn't think it was better. No.
A group of 5 federal agents are wading through the swamp looking for a still. They give up and head back to the truck, except for one guy who has to pee. He's always a one. Something grabs him and another man. The rest run, but they're shot by a strange woman in a jeep. The final man is attacked by the monster, but is saved by Swamp Thing, who has a much better costume this time around.
Yeah, it was.
Credits roll. Arcane is back, same actor, and he's looking much better than at the end of the previous film. He's back to his human-looking self.
That formula saved his life.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's complications.
He's back in his mansion and goes down to the lab in the basement. He's working with Dr. Zarel and Dr. Rochelle on mutating people and messing with genetic serum. He destroys the retest in a disintegration chamber. And you just know...
You just know somebody's going to end up in that disintegration chamber. Maybe Dr. Arcane.
Maybe. Numbers of people.
Or numbers of people. But it's like, it's one of those things where,
show it in the first act.
In the lab, there's a big open vat of acid, and you just know somebody's going to end up in that. And,
if you introduce a disintegration chamber,
you know that somebody's going to get the culmination of a fight or something,
Arcane's stepdaughter, Abby, arrives, and even before she comes in, Arcane wants the doctor to get a blood sample from her. It's his stepdaughter.
Yeah.
They're not going to have the same blood. Somebody was not thinking well there. That just occurred to me.
You're right.
Yeah, they're not physically related.
They weren't genetically connected at all.
Yeah.
But he thought that there'd be a genetic connection. Whoops.
Yeah.
Oops.
Abby and Dr. Zarel do the catfight thing early on.
Yeah.
Arcane is still trying to reverse the aging process. 2 kids at a local motel read porn magazines and watch MTV. Nothing says 1992 like MTV and porn magazines. There's a knock at the door. It's one of Arcane's escaped monsters.
Uh-oh. Swamp
Thing arrives just in time and fights the beast until the thing hits a propane tank and blows up everything in the park.
Swamp Thing has a tendency to do that.
Over
Swamp Thing shows up just in time.
Yeah. Swamp Thing gives the kids a thumbs up as he leaves the scene.
Considering how big the swamp is.
He's always where he needs to be.
He's always right where he needs to be.
There's a hunting montage as Arcane's men search for Swamp Thing. Abby asks why her mother didn't have a funeral. Arcane is evasive.
Mm-hmm.
Swamp Thing rescues Abby from some hillbillies, and they have a talk. He recaps the first movie for her, and he tells her to leave, but she needs to find out what happened to her mother. The soldiers come and grab her and blow up Swamp Thing again. In liquid form,
Really blows him up.
blows him up.
Yeah, successfully, but that doesn't stop him.
In liquid form, Swamp Thing goes up inside Arcane's house sewer.
Ew.
Yes.
But it's a way in.
Dr. Rochelle says that only the head of security or Dr. Zarel have the right blood types to save Arcane. Zarel overhears this and starts thinking about betraying him.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, Arcane plays a creepy pipe organ as Swamp Thing regenerates in the bathtub upstairs.
Phantom of the Opera moment.
Do all villains have pipe organs?
They should. If they don't, they should.
When was the last time you saw a heroic character with a pipe organ in their house?
No, it's evil only.
Maybe a little cliche there. Yeah. Abby and Swamp Thing drive off in a stolen Jeep. Swamp Thing is doing the driving, so he's a little more intelligent. Yeah, he's able to drive.
Oh, he's just fine, yeah.
Abby and Alec have a weird hallucinogenic sex scene.
Yeah. Which is,
Here, smell these plants.
Yeah, it's like sprouts out of his arm or his hand, and it releases a poof of hallucinogenic spores, yeah. And he hasn't physically changed, but she sees him as human again.
Yeah.
And they do it.
We cut back to the two annoying kids who now plan to get a photo of Swamp Thing, but are instead captured by Arcane soldiers. Swamp Thing beats them all up with a baseball bat and lets the kids take his picture. Dr. Zarel sticks Dr. Rochelle with the formula. They capture Abby again and hook her up to the machine opposite Arcane. The energies start flying from her into him. The stepdaughter's blood just happens to be compatible.
Yeah.
And we don't know why.
Yeah.
Arcane feels better until he notices the warts. Yeah. Zarel has switched formulas and betrayed him.
Bastard, you betrayed me.
Swamp Thing comes in, but before Arcane can do anything, the door breaks down, and the monster that used to be Dr. Rochelle attacks Swamp Thing. He's got this big old brain.
Mm-hmm.
He ends up in the disintegrator. Somebody
ended up in the disintegrator.
Which also sets off the lair's self-destruct device for no real reason.
Well, all good lairs have a self-destruct. You know?
They had been using the this disintegration for these creatures all along, but this creature...
Well, and they kind of smashed it up. They kind of smashed up the machine.
It's like putting a hole in your microwave oven.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. You put a hole in the side of the microwave oven and turn it on. It's going to self-destruct your entire kitchen.
Don't ask how we know that.
Yeah.
And it blows up. Arcane is trapped under a heavy door. Swamp Thing then carries Abby out of the exploding mansion and revives her outside. Mm-hmm. He warns her that there may be side effects, and she grows a leaf out of her foot.
Which is
all this action, and I come home with a foot fungus.
Yep.
Of course, after sex with Swamp Thing,
foot fungus may be the least of your problems. She have fungus? Yeah.
This film is cheesy fun. There's none of the darkness that infects all the recent DC movies.
Yeah.
Although not quite a comedy, it does take itself very non-seriously.
Definitely not as dark, more fluffy. Yeah.
Far less seriously than even the first movie, even though this looks like it had a bigger budget.
Mm-hmm.
It's barely a step better than Toxic Avenger. Yeah, very kind of similar, actually, in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
The acting in this movie makes my head hurt. It very obviously is in the direction, not even in the writing.
When Heather Locklear is the best actor in the movie, that's saying something.
Yeah. I haven't seen Heather Locklear in anything in years. I remember her being a better actress than this. Apparently I was younger then. Mm-hmm. All the acting here feels very much more like a parody than the first movie. Mm-hmm. And the Swamp Thing creature himself seems way too happy and laughs way too much here.
Mm-hmm.
Swamp Thing's voice is completely different for no apparent reason. And nothing says it's the 80s like the music on this film.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
I'll give the original Swamp Thing an 8.
Me too.
I'll give this one a 6 or maybe a 5.
6.
Yeah.
I give it a 6. Yeah.
Okay, and then that was the end of the Swamp Thing movie franchise.
All this swampy talk is making me hungry.
Yeah.
Do we have any
We didn't
swamp-
have a swampy snack today.
We have a swamp-related snack.
We have special snacks chosen for this. I have here in my hand Zapp's Cajun Dill Gator Taters. Nothing says swamp like Gator Taters.
And these are Voodoo Heat, New Orleans
Voodoo.
style. Which the new series has some voodoo things. I'm sorry if I'm crackling that too close to the speaker. So
Well,
we're gonna.
let's
This
try
is the first time.
Let's try the Cajun Dill Gator, because I fully expect these are going to be revolting.
Well, I tend to not like flavored chips in general.
I do, but
Chips should be plain and ridged.
Cajun Dill, I'm imagining these are pickle flavored.
Uh-huh.
Cajun Dill Gator Taters.
Gator taters. Your face.
Oh, God!
Your facial expression is cracking me up. You know what's weird? That's really good.
No, they're not.
Yeah.
I think I want to turn into Swamp Thing.
Okay, we have a split decision on this. Those are delicious.
Okay, I'll try some Voodoo Heat here. Maybe that'll kill the pickle palate.
Okay. Well, I guess you'll either love these or hate these. Yeah.
These taste just like the other ones, only they're a little spicier.
Voodoo Heat. Sweeter. Hotter. Man, these are good.
You win.
I never liked flavored potato chips. Yum. Okay.
Okay, the Voodoo Heat is not as bad. Cajun Cater, whatever, yeah.
Okay. So anyway, pick some of those up. You might like them.
You can have mine. Speaking of revolting, in 1990, they tried to come up with the Swamp Thing TV series, and this ran for 3 years, so it was moderately successful, especially in the beginning.
People liked it. Yeah.
The problem with this series, the biggest problem I saw, it was a half-an-hour show.
Yeah.
Each episode ran 23 minutes without commercials, and it's not enough to tell a story.
Very rushed little stories.
Very rushed stories. For example, episode 1, we meet young Jim, and he befriends Swamp Thing in the first 5 minutes. Arcane hunts down a dwarf and makes him watch a dancing hooker before shooting him in the head. The end.
He's not exaggerating.
Let me tell you that story again. He hunts down a dwarf and makes him watch a dancing hooker before shooting the dwarf in the head. That's the story. That is the story. Here's episode 1. Episode 2 is not related to episode 1.
They didn't have a continuing story arc.
Each one was
from
an
episode to episode.
That might not have been too bad if it had been an ongoing serial, but no, this was
or
each
even
episode.
like a cliffhanger kind of thing, with each one.
The first episode, you got Swamp Thing and he meets the little boy Jim, and they introduce the characters, sorta. Other than that, any of the other episodes are completely interchangeable. Episode 2, Arcane does plastic surgery on a woman to make her look like the duplicate of Alec Holland's dead wife. This triggers Swamp Thing to have flashbacks of his human life. She tries to trick him into giving up his secret recipe, but he figures it out.
He figures out it's not really her.
The end.
Yeah.
Episode 3. Arcane has Jim kidnapped so Swamp Thing won't interfere with Arcane's latest experiment, and a bunch of creatures roam the woods. The experimental creature kills Dr. Arcane, but Swamp Thing has to revive him so Arcane can reveal where he trapped Jim.
Yeah.
And when I say a bunch of creatures, that's really just one thing that looks like a mutant rat.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah. Jim and some guy named Obo want to see the Swamp Maiden, a local legend, episode 4. If you kiss her, she turns you into a monster. Why would you want to go find her? They run into a journalist who wants to trap Swamp Thing. Obo kisses the maiden and becomes a giant frogman. I'm not making this up.
Nope.
Swamp Thing rescues Jim and the reporter from the Obo creature, and then gets the maiden to break the spell. And that's the first 4 episodes, and we said that's enough.
Well, yeah. And I saw some of it when it came out, and yeah, that's kind of what they were. It's kind of how they were. Yeah.
I remember watching this off and on when it came out, and
I didn't see the whole thing, but many of the episodes.
I was young enough. I enjoyed it somewhat.
Yeah.
No, it's horribly dated.
Very dated.
Bad. It's the acting is really bad.
It's not very dark. It's kind of silly. Dr. Akeen has big hair.
I always wanted that hair. That was the only thing. I'm
poofy,
totally jealous of his hair.
Big poofy 90s hair.
Love to have that
90s
hair now.
hair.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a lot of hair.
If you get a chance to watch at least one of the episodes, just check out the costumes and the suits that he wears and the hair.
Yeah,
and...
he's always
this guy is so 80s.
Big 80s suits. Yeah, the big oversized.
His head had been after Miami Vice. You can kind of tell by the suits.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so it ran for 3 years, and there are, I don't know, 40, 50, 60 episodes. There's a lot of them. It was 23 episode seasons.
You might want to collect the whole set, but meh.
If you're a big fan of Swamp Thing, it's not the worst thing in the world. I mean, you're not that much Swamp Thing out there, so yeah. So, TV Swamp Thing could never get any better. Until 2019, when they really screw us.
Oh. I'm kind of angry about that.
Swamp Thing 2019 is a DC... What is the name of the channel? DC's Special Streaming Network. We'll call it that.
What did they call it?
It's still on. This is where Doom Patrol was.
Yeah.
And I will give a shout out right now. I really like Doom Patrol. Doom Patrol was really good.
Yes.
All the way through, beginning to end, I want more of that.
Yeah.
And there will be more of that.
There will be more Doom Patrol. Yeah, that was really excellent.
But when Doom Patrol ended, they say, hey, stay tuned, because next week we're going to start this new series called Swamp Thing.
And they
advertised that they spent $80 million on the budget, and it's the most expensive. It was really good. The trailers look great.
Well, I guess the problem was they spent too much of the budget too fast.
No.
And then they came back and said, oh, we don't have enough money to finish it, so...
They budgeted $80 million for this thing. Yeah. They spent $40 million. Then they found out the state of North Carolina was supposed to give them a $40 million incentive for filming there.
And they
changed their mind, or they didn't qualify, or something. So they only had half the budget. And they ended up going over the budget that they were intending. So they said, you don't get 13 episodes this season, you get 10. And we're going to cancel
There's going to be no more seasons. So
before the first episode aired, it was canceled.
Yeah.
So you go into this knowing that it's not going to be long.
We were warned that it wouldn't wrap up well, and they rushed the writing. They had to rush the writing because they crammed 13 episodes into 10, and they had planned on being able to extend things out.
And I'll tell you in advance, the first 9 episodes are awesome. It's a really good story.
Oh, it's so good.
It's kind of slow, but it builds up
because they thought they had time.
It's a good budget.
Yeah.
It looks great. And then they totally
thought they
blow
had time,
it in the last
so they
episode.
take their time. And yeah, it's really good, really dark and atmospheric and good special effects and good acting. And then it stops. And the last episode is just so crammed in, so rushed, so unfinished, so many loose ends. Yeah.
Well, let's see. They give us, in the first episode, they give us the storyline. Alec Holland is the scientist who's there to check out this weird contamination in the swamp. And the rich guy in town, Sunderland, has hired him to figure out what the problem is. The thing is, we find out early on, it's Sunderland is planting this mutagen in various spots inside the lake to change things. He figures if it changes, he can make money on it. Holland figures out what's going on, so one of Sunderland's men shoots him in the boat. He's out at night in the boat, and the guy shoots him, and he falls into the water, and it explodes, and boom, Swamp Thing.
And the mutagen is there with him, and
he
the
falls
explosion
right into
is
it.
part of it. Yeah.
So at the very end of the first episode, we see Swamp Thing rise out of the water, and there he is. And then in the second episode, he starts to become intelligent. He's just
getting
a monster
his memories
at first.
back, and figuring out what he is and who he is, and
And about the time that the second episode comes along, we figure out that there are no alligators, snakes, mosquitoes, or anything else in this swamp other than trees.
It is a very safe swamp as far as creatures. Yeah,
I don't think swamps are that safe.
Yeah.
And somewhere in the first episode, Dr. Arcane comes to town, who is Abby Arcane, a good girl scientist.
Yeah,
she's
not a villain.
Not a villain.
Dr. Arcane is not a villain in
Although
this.
it's clear that she has some history with her bad guy father who may have beaten her or abused her. In one of the episodes later on, this big, dark, scary thing comes in and attacks her in her sleep. She has this nightmare about this dream, which I assume would have been him returning in the second season to be the main villain.
To be Dr. Arcane, the bad guy.
And throughout the series, we hear about this dark evil that's off in the swamp somewhere causing all this trouble, which I assume would have been him as well. We never get that far.
We don't get that far.
Yeah.
There's some darkness. And
so there's no evil Arcane in this series, at least that we ever see. So he and Abby work together to fight against Sunderland, who is the main villain throughout the series. And Sunderland brings in this doctor whose name... I stopped making notes by the time that guy came in.
I don't recall the doctor's name.
The doctor is played by Kevin Durand, who has been in lots of things. He was in Lost and
big guy,
big tall
strong
guy. Normally he's very muscular and well built. In this case,
toned it down for him.
He's a small little. Well, he's not short. He's a tall, nerdy man in this. He's a.
They really dork him up.
Yeah. And as we get to in the final credit scene, there's a reason for that later on. But he's doing the science for Sunderland after Holland gets killed, and eventually he learns that Swamp Thing's body can reproduce and do these things. So he's got this wife with Alzheimer's or some kind of dementia. And we're getting down toward the end of this point. He cuts off some of the organs from Swamp Thing, cooks them up in a frying pan on the stove like you would make stir fry.
He's gone a little bonkers, I think, by that point.
Tries to feed his Alzheimer's wife this stuff, and she won't eat it. So he eats it himself. Because, stirred fried Swamp Thing.
What could go wrong? Yeah.
And I'm not making this up. It's just stir fried.
Well, at one point they have captured Swamp Thing and they autopsy him.
Yeah.
And there's nothing, there's no animal matter there. It's all plant. He's got a heart, he's got lungs, he's got liver, all these organs, and literally he's taking them out and they don't do anything. And Swamp Thing's still alive. And
meanwhile, 10 years ago, there's this actor in town making this movie called The Blue Devil. And he's like, I want my big break. I want my big break. So this character who's called the Phantom Stranger comes in and says, would you like a big break?
He gets a deal.
And he says, boom, you are now the star of the movie. But I'm going to call on you in the future for a favor. And in the meantime, you can't leave town.
Yeah, he's literally trapped in town. Anytime he tries to leave, bad things happen.
Now, this character is in like 2, 3, 4 minutes of each episode and has very little interaction with anybody else until toward the end, where in like episode 8, Abby and her friend get caught in this warehouse with 3 armed security guards. And suddenly it's time for the favor. He turns into this giant blue, literal blue giant devil
with hellfire powers and
runs
super
in,
strong,
kills the 3 guards, runs out. And we've been seeing this character built up over episode after episode, and that's all. He kills 3 security guards, and then he leaves town and he's gone.
Yeah, because
there had to have been more to it.
There was gonna be more to it, a lot more than that.
Yeah.
But 10 episodes. You can only fit so much in 10 episodes.
You never find out what this Phantom Stranger is a DC character. You can look up what he does, and the Blue Devil's a big character too. But neither of them are in any way important, other than clearing out 3 security guards.
They were going to be important. Yeah. And rescued Dr. Arcane. And
I'm figuring by episode 4 or 5, there'd be, swamp monsters. Like in the movie, Arcane turned into a monster, and there'd be monster battles. And
No, they get to that at the very, very end.
The post-credit scene of episode 10 is the Kevin Durand scientist character. He's finally mutated into a big green monster, and he looks good. It's of course, it was one scene. They could go all out.
Yeah.
But they should have had him in there turning into a monster in episode 5. It's a little too drawn out.
Because they thought
they thought they had more. They
thought
they had more episodes.
Yeah, they would have done more.
I think the first 9 episodes were a serious 9. The series overall, I'm going to give up 4 too. Because they screwed it so badly.
Yeah, we have to. Yeah.
Hopefully, maybe they'll find some way to bring it back, but I don't think so.
Madame Xanadu, she had her own comic line, too. She's in it.
Very the voodoo different. Side of things.
Very different than the comic. Yeah, that's where the voodoo chips
It's
come
not
from.
Just Swamp Thing. There's lots of other characters that come in and out.
Yeah.
Apparently there was going to be a John Constantine crossover before too much longer, and that didn't happen either.
Yeah.
The guy from the series from a few years ago, same actor,
Yeah.
was signed. Didn't happen.
Magic guy. And
Yeah.
Disappointing.
Wasted potential.
But definite lack of insects. They were outside a lot. I mean, there'd be a restaurant, that's right on the bayou, right, literally overlooking the swamp, and they're on the deck and out and walking along the shore and everything, and not once does anybody in this swat a mosquito.
or see any kind of snake.
Or see any kind of mosquitoes
not
or
every,
bugs.
Not
or
every
anything.
swamp has alligators.
You do see some
I think all swamps
some
have
fireflies.
snakes.
I think there were fireflies.
Probably, yeah.
For the, oh, look, pretty fireflies. But,
swamps are nasty places. That's why people don't live in the swamp.
This was a very sanitary, safe, clean swamp.
Okay, so Swamp Thing the movie. Thumbs up.
Yes.
Return of Swamp Thing.
Sideways.
10 o'clock.
Mediocre. Yeah.
Swamp Thing 1990.
No, slowing down, slanting downward.
And Swamp Thing 2019. It's kind of,
Yeah, could have been so good.
Watch the first episode. Go with it if you like it, but expect to be let down.
Yeah. The ending doesn't wrap up. Yeah.
And that's our show.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us. Stop
you.
in during the week at horrorguys.com for news and horror updates. Check out our Twitter feed at Horror Bulletin. And we'll see you next week.
See ya.
I'm Brian.
I'm Kevin.
And we'll see you.
Bye.